There's more reaction to news around KPMG. Now, Nedbank says it will review its relationship with the audit firm. KPMG's lead engagement partner between Nedbank and VBS Mutual Bank resigned. This is after it emerged he didn't disclose his financial interests with VBS. For more on the story, we're joined by Economist Bonke Dumisa, who's joining us from our Durban studios. Good evening, and thank you so much for your time tonight. One of the things that you've already said, at least within the public conversation, is that you believe that the writing has been long on the wall for VBS and that any credible auditors should have picked this up. Why do you think it was ignored?
I think people had believed that if ever you had big auditing firms like KPMG dealing with the external audits for VBS and PwC dealing with the internal audits for VBS, then everything was going to be kosher. But unfortunately, things have been coming out time and again to say there are trouble signs here. Unfortunately, when the Reserve Bank finally acted and said they are appointing a curator, then people started saying that it's the targeting of black banks, whereas that was not the issue. The issue was that there were things which were not okay there. As we hear now that there's about 900 million to 1 billion rands which cannot be accounted for.
And of course, the issue is not just with VBS, but for all intents and purposes, it is with the auditors who are seen to have been complicit, at least, in helping it perhaps disguise the true state of what that bank was. Let's look at KPMG and the work that they've done. Given the fact that they have a hand in other banks, what are the broader implications for their actions?
That's the sad part of the whole thing. The mere fact that two of their very senior executives resigned with immediate effect on Friday because of this, and one of those was the person who was signing off on the VBS accounts, actually raises many questions. Because how are people going to be comfortable now? Because people thought in South Africa then that so long as you bring the auditors, everything is guaranteed to be safe. And now when this thing happens in such a big way, involving the big auditing firms, then people are going to start questions. And that is not what we need in South Africa, because you must remember that one of the things that we pride ourselves in South Africa is that our financial institutions and our regulatory environment is so strict that the whole world envies us. And now how can they envy us if ever one of the very top companies has been implicated on such a thing?
Do you think that the other banks who have been using KPMG for some of their audit work should be concerned, especially in lieu of the fact that KPMG is now implementing an 18-month review of all the work that's been done?
I think they should be concerned, but at least one comforting thing is that one of those banks, Nedbank, has already said that they've gone through their own books and they are comfortable that there is nothing amiss. But we have not heard anything from Standard Bank and Investec. But I don't think it will really go to the other banks. I think the other more firmly established banks have got more rigorous ways of going through these things so they can detect some of these things from the onset.
Let's talk about the fact that what we also had happening today is the Auditor General deciding to, of course, cut its contracts with KPMG. There's, of course, a broader conversation to be had there about the conduct of the financial services sector and the implications then that has too for the work that KPMG has done for government.
You must remember that the government made it quite clear that any of the auditing firms or any entity for that matter which is found to have been part of any collusion on such things, the government must cut ties with them. So I think this is just in line with that particular directive to public entities. And don't be surprised if ever this extends to all the other departments.
Do you think that there are lessons that we can draw out of this? I mean, given what we've had in the country over the last year, where audit firms have been implicated, and perhaps part of what has been largely kept underground with regards to how the financial services sector, at least some parts of it, have been operating, how do we get ourselves out of this quagmire that we seemingly are in?
I think some of the suggestions, and if I remember well, one of the many finance ministers we've had in South Africa over the past few months actually mentioned that what we need in South Africa is the auditing firms must not just be doing auditing, and yet at the same time you find then that they are also advisors to their clients, because it brings a conflict of interest. So there must be that clear line. Is either you're doing the auditing and then someone else and other firms deal with the advising, and then in that way there won't be this compromise. Because what seems to have happened here is you had KPMG auditing VPS Bank, and yet people from KPMG seem to have been involved, not just the shady loans given to some of those executives, but it seems as if they were also involved on the advisory side of the business, and that is where you start seeing some conflict.
But to the extent that we've had several accountants also come out and talk about how irregularities within the financial sector are often disguised in language that seems acceptable, and to the extent that part of that is is almost cultural and has been inculcated within the system, do you think that the regulatory bodies and the statutory bodies that are in place can adequately root out this corruption?
I am one of those people who have faith on the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. So I believe then that SAICA, working together with the regulatory body on auditing and other players, will, because it is in their interest. Remember, they are paid big bucks. I mean, an average auditor is paid over 3 million rands a year. So if ever you've got these question marks then about what they are doing, it's going to affect that premium. So I think they will go out of their way to protect this, even if then it means they are protecting their own interests. Something is going to be done. I want to believe that this is more of an exception than a norm. But going back to what you were saying about some of these bad things being coached in very good, interesting terms, it's interesting when you start hearing that there were some misstatements from VPS. Hey, man, let's forget about those big words, misstatement. If ever there's misrepresentation, it is misrepresentation. Let us not use those terms which may just bring some dignity to the wrong things being done.
All right, so that's where we leave it for tonight. Economist Bonke Dumisa.